If we may start by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha for the thawab of Sayyida Narjis, mother of our 12th Imam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما ولي الله الأعظم حجة الله ابن الحسن صاحب العصر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، ولكل قوم هاد. صدق الله العلي العظيم وآمنا به. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. We commemorate, or as we gather here to commemorate these last 11 or 12 nights of this blessed month of Shahr Ramadan, we approach the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a personality who is unique and a personality unmatched, not only in Islamic history but in world history in general. You see, a person like Amir al-Mu'mineen, somebody whose dhikr brings hope in the hearts of people from generations, time of Rasulullah until today. A person who has conquered the hearts of the people for 1400 years, still running strong. Amir al-Mu'mineen is that person, despite his enemies cursing him from the mimbar, they would still acknowledge and pay attribute or pay respect to his fada'il. A character unique in history. Amir al-Mu'mineen was that person who was born within the precincts of the Holy Kaaba. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ensured that through Nabi Adam and then through Nabi Ibrahim, that this Kaaba would be the universal symbol of Tawheed for the entire humanity. And within this symbol of Tawheed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for Amir al-Mu'mineen to be born. Why? A unique personality with a unique cause and a unique role in Islam. Amir al-Mu'mineen was that person whom even his most staunchest of enemies accepted and in the end admitted his fada'il. You look at the book Lisanul Mizan, authored by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, famous historian from the madhab of the Ahl Sunnah. He narrates a hadith in this book Lisanul Mizan where he says, Ruwiya an Abi Bakr, the Abu Bakr ibn Abi Quhafa, the first Khalifa, narrates this tradition. He says, Sami'atu an Rasulillah. He says, I heard from Rasulullah. He says, Inna fi sarat, inna ala sirat la akabah, wa la yujawwizuha ahadun illa bijawazin min Ali ibn Abi Talib. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. this one person who stood in Saqifa, who stood against Amirul Mu'mineen, himself narrates this hadith from Rasulullah. He says that I heard from him that on the day of judgment there is a sirat. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا السِّرَاتِ. This sirat on the day of judgment, according to the traditions of our sixth Imam, he says that this sirat is much finer than the strand of a hair. It is much sharper than the blade of a sword. There are people on this sirat, they will pass through it like lightning, because their amal were good, because these were people who had love for Ahlul Bayt in their heart. They will pass through this sirat with the blink of an eye, like lightning. There are certain people who will pass through sirat at a very slow pace. They will be crawling on the sirat. Eventually they will reach the other end. There are some people who will pass through the sirat crawling and clutching onto it, but will fall down. And from the times they will fall down, they will come up. The part which does not come off the sirat will be burnt. What doesn't remain or what hangs onto the sirat will not be burnt. Eventually, like this, after receiving numerous burns from the fire of hell, they will eventually cross over to the path of Jannah through the Shafa'ah. In either case, regardless of what the person's situation is on the sirat, Abu Bakr says, on that sirat, nobody can pass unless and except they have a stamp of passing from Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ya Ali, Lisanul Mizan, books are not ours, hadith are not ours, from the Ahl al-Khilaf. When we have or when we recite in Surah Al-Hamd, Ihdina as-Siratul Mustaqim, Mufassirin tell us a hadith from Imam al-Baqir that Ihdina as-Siratul Mustaqim is actually a dua to be on the sirat of Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In reality, in Surah Al-Hamd, 5 times a day when you pray, 10 times you recite Surah Al-Hamd in your first and second rak'ah, 10 times in a day you are asking Allah to keep you on the sirat of Amirul Mu'mineen. Depending on what your relationship was with Amirul Mu'mineen in this dunya being a sirat, this sirat being a religion, depending on how your reaction or how your actions with the sirat in the dunya was, this is what is going to determine what our outcome on the sirat in the akhirah is. Yani if your relationship with Amirul Mu'mineen is good in the dunya, then your relationship with Amirul Mu'mineen will be good in the akhirah. And he allows you to pass through this sirat. But more than that, it is narrated, again recorded in the book Al-Bidaya wa Nihaya. Famous historian Ibn Kathir from the Ahl Sunnah, he narrates a hadith from Umar ibn Khattab where he says, سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يقول إن النظر إلى وجه علي إن النظر إلى وجه علي عبادة. Hadith from Umar ibn Khattab, narrated in the book Al-Bidaya wa Nihaya. He says, I heard from Rasulullah where he said, to look at the face of Amirul Mu'mineen is ibadah. When we come up with this hadith, maybe if somebody said they were from Shia text, they would be exaggerated or they would be ghulu. Mashallah, these hadith and these narrations are not even from our books. Books of opposing schools of thought. No other person in history, and particularly in Islamic history, has had this honor or this prestige that even his staunchest opposition accept his fada'il. And this in itself is a hujjah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and know that despite people knowing the position of Amirul Mu'mineen, they still went against him. Yawmul Ghadir, There is no doubt 120,000 Sahabas present there after Hijjatul Wida, where Rasulullah lifted the arm of Amir al-Mu'mineen and he says, Man kuntum mawla, fahada aliyum mawla, Allahumma wali man wala, wansur man nasara, wakhdhul man khadala. Rasulullah lifts the hand of Amir al-Mu'mineen and he says, whosoever's master I am, Mawla I am, then Ali is his master. O Allah, befriend the one who befriended Ali. O Allah, support the one who supported Ali. O Allah, disgrace the one who disgraced Ali. This event of Ghadir is recorded by the biggest mufassirin from the Ahl Sunnah. You will find this event of Ghadir recorded in the Tafsir Durr al-Manthur. You will find it recorded by Jalaluddin al-Suyuti, by Fakhr al-Razi, Tafsir al-Kabir, Tafsir of Tabarani. Over 70 to 80 major sources from the Ahl Sunnah. All of them narrate the issue of Al-Ghadir. Tayyib, a person comes up with an objection. He says the word Mawla might mean friend. Correct, linguistically Mawla can mean friend, but look at the events that happened after this declaration. Books of the Ahl Sunnah narrate to us that as soon as Rasulullah made this announcement or this declaration, for 3 days Rasulullah put a tent and made Amirul Mu'mineen sit in that tent such that he can receive bay'ah from the people. This bay'ah that was given was a bay'ah of obedience, bay'ah recognizing the authority of Amirul Mu'mineen. So even if we say for the sake of argument that yes, Mawla means friend, and at that time if we suppose and stretch the argument and say Rasulullah meant that the word Mawla means friend, then what about the bay'ah that people were giving? Not for 1 hour, not for 2 hours, not for 1 day, but for 3 continuous days. And they were all, when they came in to give bay'ah, they will all greet Amir al-Mu'mineen by saying, Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. A position of leadership, a position of authority. Yet despite the proof being clear, the position of Amir al-Mu'mineen, brighter than the sun, clearer than the day, people might argue, if this was the case, why did they leave the right of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Why did they abandon Amir al-Mu'mineen? An argument comes into mind. Is it possible for the entire Muslim Ummah to have gone astray? Maybe like the way in Kitab al-Kafi, Sheikh al-Kulaini, may Allah raise his position, mentions in Kitab al-Kafi that at the time of the martyrdom of Rasulullah, everybody turned away from the deen. Irtad illa al-khamsa. They apostated. They went away from the religion. They disobeyed the command of Rasulullah except 5 people. Person asks, is this logical with all these fada'il, all these hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen we have mentioned? Maybe 5 people went astray, we can understand. Maybe 10 people, maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000, but the entire Muslim Ummah went astray? Is this possible? Is it possible for such a majority? Is it logical for a majority to have gone astray and neglected all these fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen? In our answer, we say first of all that the majority is not always an accurate indicator of haqq. This is the first answer. Here, global world population, 6 billion people. Correct? Give or take 6 billion. From these 6 billion people, give or take 1 billion people are Muslims. So 1/6 of the world population is Muslim. This means the entire Muslim population is a minority. So if we use the argument that the majority is always correct, then by this logic, the Christians and the Buddhists combined are correct and the Muslimin are wrong. We should be on batil collectively as an ummah. So the argument that the majority is always correct is an argument that is flawed from this first proof. The second proof, Rasulullah himself. When Islam started in Arabia. This issue of Risala, when the Prophet became or was ordained with Risala, it is known as Yawmul Bi'tha. Yawmul Bi'tha being 27th of Rajab. This day also coincides with the day of Mi'raj. So perhaps in the following year or many years later, on the same day of 27th of Mi'raj, on 27th of Rajab, Mi'raj happened. And Taban, when we talk about Mi'raj is when the Prophet ascended to the heavens in both body and soul, not only in his soul, in that his body was there. No, it was a physical journey. And the Mi'raj that happened was not a Mi'raj that happened once. We have traditions that narrate Rasulullah went on Mi'raj multiple times while he had this role of Risala. In either way, the Bi'tha happened on 27th of Rajab. Rasulullah was in Makkah for 10 years. For the first 3 years, he never announced his Risala. He never openly announced his prophethood. There wasn't a da'wah amma, the way they say, an open invitation towards Islam. Rather, this process of nabuwah and risala, bringing out the message of Tawheed, was a message or was a plan that was tadriji. They say step by step. First, the mission or Angel Jibreel landed on, he came down to Rasulullah, he gave him the message. Rasulullah spoke with Rasulullah spoke with Lady Khadija. She was a Muslim. And then many historians say that Amirul Mu'mineen accepted Islam as well. And he was one of the first Muslims of Islam. This in itself is an argument which is technically incorrect. When a person says that Ali ibn Abi Talib was the first Muslim, this is an error. It is technically not correct. Because when you say Ali ibn Abi Talib was the first Muslim, the first question that comes into mind is, what was he before he became a Muslim? So this statement in itself is not applicable to Amirul Mu'mineen. Amirul Mu'mineen was a believer in Tawheed even before he came into this dunya. Why? Because we have hadith that say that the existence of the Anbiya and the Awliya started 14,000 years before Adam was created. Rasulullah says, Kuntu nabiyan wa Adam bayna al-ma'i wa teen. He says, I was a prophet. Rasulullah says, I was a prophet even before Adam was created. And then in the same hadith, he says, Ana wa Aliyun min nurin wahidin. He says, me and Ali are created from the same nur. And Rasul was a Rasul 14,000 years before Adam, which gives us proof that Imam was an Imam 14,000 years before Adam was created. When he came into this dunya, he was just reinforcing the same ahad, the same aqd that he had taken in Alam al-Dhar. For Rasulullah comes in and he propagates the message of Islam, but at a step-by-step level. You will find the verse in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَانْظُرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ, for example, al-Mukarrabin, warn your close relatives, your kin and Keith. So Rasulullah started with the Quraysh, or with Bani Hashim, Bani Abdul Muttalib in particular, then Bani Hashim, and then the Quraysh in general. So Rasulullah, when he started to deliver the message of Islam, delivered it on a step-by-step basis. It was not something that he had done all of a sudden, at one go. During these years where Rasulullah was preaching, he was a minority. Yet many times the hadith tell us that the first people to pray salah with Rasulullah was Sayyidah Khadija, Amir al-Mu'mineen, and Ja'far. 4 people reciting salah with Rasulullah as their imam. If we hold the argument that the majority is always correct, if as an outsider, somebody from Rome or somebody from Abyssinia came to Makkah at that particular time where Rasulullah is praying with 4 other people and then applied the rule that the majority is always correct, what would have happened? Then the conclusion would have been that Rasulullah wal-ayadu billah is batil, and the Quraysh of Makkah are on the right path with the rule that the majority is always correct. Majority is never always correct. بالعكس. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. Furthermore, this event or this concept of an ummah revolting after the death of a prophet and disobeying the commands of the prophet is not something which is exclusive to Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is not an event that is exclusive to Islam. Rather, all previous religions, all previous monotheist religions had similar problems. Previous ummahs of the Jews, ummah of Nabi Musa, the ummah of Nabi Isa, the ummah of Nabi Nuh, the ummah of Nabi Sulaiman, all these generations, all these religions fell into chaos and went astray because they decided to disobey the wasi of that prophet. This is not something new to Amir al-Mu'mineen, the ummah turning on their back. This is not something new. Look at the ummah of Nabi Sulaiman. Nabi Sulaiman had a kingdom, as you all know. The world was at his fingertips. He had command not only over the ins but over the jinn as well. Allah granted him this mulk. In this mulk, when he wanted to bring the throne of Bilqis towards Baytul Muqaddas, as you may all know this famous incident, he called out to his subjects and he said, which one of you will bring for me the throne of Bilqis? There was a person who stood up. His name was Asif ibn Barkhiyya. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I will bring for you the throne of Bilqis in the blink of an eye. Who was Asif ibn Barkhiyya? This person, Asif, was the wasi of Nabi Sulaiman, just like the way Amir al-Mu'mineen was the wasi of Rasulullah. And Nabi Sulaiman gave the opportunity to Asif to bring the throne of Bilqis by the virtue of a miracle using the Ismul A'dam within the blink of an eye, such that the Ummah would be able to see the greatness and the magnificence of Asif. So when he declares him as his wasi, people will not oppose him because Asif has already performed the miracle in front of them. Similarly with Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yet what did people do? History tells us Asif brought the throne of Bilqis with the blink of an eye. Yet after Nabi Sulaiman died, the Ummah went against Asif ibn Barkhiyya. They say that they expelled him and the real Shias of Nabi Sulaiman all the way to Misr, to Egypt. Where was the kingdom of Nabi Sulaiman? The kingdom of Nabi Sulaiman was in Jerusalem at that time. They expelled the Shias and Asif ibn al-Barkhiyya all the way to Egypt. And what happened to this kingdom of Nabi Sulaiman? A global government at that time, you could say. An entire kingdom disintegrated into tiny pieces, into broken pieces of land, and the religion of Nabi Sulaiman in itself dissolved until the next prophet came. It's one example. Look at the example of Nabi Isa. What happened at the time of Nabi Isa? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to raise Nabi Isa to the heavens, the Romans came and they crucified somebody who looked like Nabi Isa. Nabi Isa knew that he is going to go into a prolonged ghaibah and the ummah cannot be left without a guide. So he appointed a successor. He appointed a wasi. Who was this wasi? This wasi, the books of history tell us his name was Sham'un, who is known as Simon Peter, or Simon, the disciple of Jesus, one of the 12 disciples that was there, Simon. From his lineage, by the way, between the brackets, from his lineage is the mother of our 12th Imam, Sayyida Narjis, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. She was born to the family of a Roman king. This Roman king was from the lineage of Sham'un, Simon, the disciple of Nabi Isa. In either way, Nabi Isa knows he is going to go into ghaibah. So he appointed Simon or Shamun, the disciple, as his successor. This was the first wasi in the line of many awsiya and awliya until the coming of Rasulullah. What did the ummah do? In the meantime, the Romans went and they crucified this person who was a Shabi of Nabi Isa. The people who wanted to kill Jesus Christ for his message, the people who wanted to crucify Jesus Christ for the values and the principles that he believed in. At this time, they all revolted against Simon. The disciples of Nabi Isa himself revolted against Shamun. And what happened? Simon was expelled from the lands again of Palestine and Jerusalem into the fields of Syria. What happened? The same Romans who claimed to crucify Nabi Isa took a hold of Christianity. They themselves became the leaders of Christianity, started to appoint the popes and the other religious leaders. The people turned, the Ummah turned on Shamun, the Ummah turned on Asif ibn Barkhiyya. So when we read in history that the Ummah also turned on Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, we should not be surprised. It is not something exclusive to Islam. It is something that had happened before, like the famous saying that we have, and history repeats itself. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. A person asked our seventh Imam, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. He said, Yabna Rasulullah, if the fada'il of your grandfather Imam Ali was so cut clear and people had given bay'ah in Ghadir, for what reason did they turn back on your father? What was the cause that the people just abandoned their rights towards Amirul Mu'mineen? Imam Kadhim replies by saying, لِأَنَّهُ قَتَلَ آبَاءَهُمْ وَأَجْدَادَهُمْ. He says, because Amirul Mu'mineen had killed their fathers and their grandfathers in these wars that had taken place in Khandaq, Hunayn and Khaybar. There was only one champion in all these wars. There was only one person who was at the forefront of the Islamic army. That was Amirul Mu'mineen. Even when Amirul Mu'mineen got the Khilafah, when after Uthman was killed by his own people, and they came to Amirul Mu'mineen, and Amirul Mu'mineen was reluctant to take the government, but at the end, when he did take the government, Abdullah ibn Umar comes to him and he says to him, Ya Ali ibn Abi Talib, how do you expect to consolidate the powers within your government when you were the one responsible for killing 70 of the leaders of Quraysh on the day of Badr? You all know Islamic history. Amirul Mu'mineen had the government only for 4 years. The people came to him, yet they revolted. Why? Why wasn't he able to consolidate and hold power over Quraysh? Because he was the one responsible for killing their fathers and their forefathers in Badr and Uhud. In the Battle of Badr, which happened on days such as these, according to narrations, 17th of Ramadan, the Battle of Badr had happened. The Islamic army comes out with 313 people. Historians tell us that there were less than 10 camels in the Muslim army. Less than 10 camels. Some of the warriors, if they had swords, they would not have shields. If they had spears, they would not have swords. And some of them who didn't have a sword, some of them who had a shield would not have a sword. So their job was to come in just to protect themselves, fighting to put in numbers, 313. This crucial battle of Badr that happened, the first people to step onto the battlefield were who? Was Hamza, uncle of the Prophet, Ubaidah, who was the cousin of Rasulullah, and Amirul Mu'mineen. And they faced Utbah and Shaybah, and Amirul Mu'mineen fought Khalid ibn Utbah, or Walid ibn Utbah. Who was Walid? Walid was the uncle of Muawiyah, the grandfather of Yazid, la'natullah alayh. As well, Amirul Mu'mineen in that battle of Badr fought and killed Handala ibn Abu Sufyan, the brother of Muawiyah, again, grandfather of Yazid. He would have been or grand uncle of Yazid. This hatred of Amirul Mu'mineen for the acts that he committed in the battle of Badr remained deep inside their hearts. This grudge and this animosity was restricted inside their hearts. They openly weren't able to express their animosity so long as Rasulullah was alive. And after Rasulullah was martyred, then you see the real animosity come out to the surface. Then you see the hatred of the people and their full anger put out on Amirul Mu'mineen and his family. For what? Because of Badr. After the event of Karbala, and the Imam Hussein being martyred, and the women being brought as prisoners from Karbala to Kufa and Kufa to Sham, when these pure women, household of Rasulullah, including our fourth Imam Zainul Abidin salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, when they were brought into the darbar of Yazid in Sham, shackled, their hands cuffed together and their legs with cuffs, and Imam Zainul Abidin with a collar of thorns or spikes around his neck, when they were brought into this state into the palace of Yazid, what did Yazid say? What were the first words Yazid uttered? He recited a poem, لَيْتَ أَشْيَاخِ بِبَدْرٍ شَهِدُوا جَزَعَ الْخَزْرَجْ مِنْ وَكَإِ الْأَسَلِ لَأَحَلُّوا وَاسْتَحَلُّوا ثُمَّ قَالُوا يَا يَزِيدْ لَا تُشِلْ قَتَلْنَا الْقَوْمَ مِنْ سَادَاتِهِمْ فَعَدَلْنَاهُ بِبَدْرٍ فَاعْتَدِلْ. This was the poem of Yazid. What did he say? لَيْتَ أَشْيَاخِ بِبَدْرٍ شَهِدُوا. He said, I wish my forefathers of Badr would have seen the day like this, where we have, to give a nutshell, the translation of the poem, he says, I wish my forefathers from Badr would have seen a day like this, where we have avenged and have taken revenge for the day of Badr. وَعَدَلْنَاهُ بِبَدْرٍ فَاعْتَدِلْ. He says, my reason for fighting Imam Hussein in Karbala was to take revenge for Badr. When was Badr? When was Karbala? This hatred, this hasad, this ta'assub, this filth was buried inside their hearts, and Yazid came out with it. And in the end, he ends this poem with kufr. What does he say in the end? لَعِبَتْ هَاشِمْ بِالْمُلْكِ فَلَا خَبَرٌ جَاءَ وَلَا وَحْيٌ نَزَلَ. He said, there never was any revelation wahi from the skies. There never was any Jibra'il. This is Rasulullah who made up an excuse that he's a prophet so that he can gain a kingdom. Kufr in its end. Badr in itself was one of the biggest reasons in why the people decided to abandon the right of Amirul Mu'mineen. For them it was unacceptable that a person like Ali at the age of 24, who has humiliated them and humbled them and shed the blood of their forefathers, today for us to accept his authority, impossible. Not only did they not accept this authority, but they took their full vengeance. Which is why on the day of Ashura, when Sayyid al-Shuhada was on the battlefield, after all his relatives have been killed, he's on the horse fighting a jihad that the world has not seen. At this stage where Sayyid al-Shuhada is branding his Dhul-Fiqar and sending the kuffar to hell, what does Umar ibn Sa'ad say? Umar ibn Sa'ad stands up and he tells to his army, attack this person, the son of the quarrelsome one, Abu Turab. Even Umar ibn Sa'ad la'anatullah alayh when he wants to instigate the men to attack Imam Hussein, he reminds them by saying, this is the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, whom they have collectively agreed upon to bear enmity with. So they went and they attacked Imam Hussein in a group. Otherwise, if you read into the Maqtals, so long as Imam Hussein was in the battlefield on a one-on-one, there was not one person who would have overcome him. And finally, how did they show their full vengeance and their hatred for Amir? By dishonoring the body of Imam Hussein in the worst possible way that could be thought. Handala ibn Zayd says, in the afternoon of Ashura, when we had killed Imam Hussein, when we had killed Hussein and we had separated his body, or we had separated his head from his body, he says, Umar ibn Sa'ad called upon 10 horsemen and he said to them, Ya Ibadullah, Ya Ibadullah. Look at what Umar ibn Sa'ad is saying. He's saying, O worshippers, O slaves of Allah, which one of you are ready to come and trample the body of Hussein over here? So Handala says, we gathered 10 people with their strongest horses and we went towards the east. The other rest of us went towards the west. Umar ibn Sa'ad called out to these horses saying, Ya Khayl Allah, complete your jihad and gain proximity towards Allah by trampling the body of Hussein. At this time Zainab says, I looked out of the tent and I saw the fields of Karbala, sand and dust in every direction, and I saw the horses. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Allahumma, we ask you by the right of these nights of Qadr that are coming, write us to be from amongst the lovers of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Ya Allah, on these nights of Qadr, we ask you to accept our du'as and to accept our fasting, hasten the reappearance of our 12th Imam, and roll our names from amongst his Ansar. Ya Allah, do not let these nights pass except that you have forgiven us. Ya Allah, do not let these nights pass except that if there is any one of our friends and relatives, family members who are not in the best of health, you grant them shafa'ah. By the sake of these blessed nights, our relatives and friends who have passed away, you make for them Jannah, you make for them their graves a piece of Jannah in Barzakh. Ya Allah. وآخر الدعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين صلوا على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.